58, 59. Lost count. Eight, 59. Lost count.
Viewer discretion is advised. This show contains vaping, drinking, and vulgar language.
Battle Axe Theater. That's a good name.
Battle Axes. Battle Axe, man. He brought the preach.
Battle Axe Theater.
Depth from Battle Axe. I don't know if you guys have seen, he just rants, and it's awesome. And he just starts screaming and yelling. I need to have a beer with that guy.
There you have it.
Hey, hey, hey.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday, Punk Shoe.
Indeed. Indeed. What is up, everybody? I am Punk Shoe here with my boy Def. Just in case you didn't know who we are Battle Axe Theater, and this is Battle Axe Live. How you doing,
Cheers.
Def?
Cheers. I'm all right, man. A little beat down from a case of the Mondays. Other than that, I'm all right, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
And enjoying this ice cold beer.
I need to get some beer glasses, man. I'm gonna pour my beer into a blue cup later because that seems to be all I know how to drink out of. But definitely want to get some bat beer glasses, man. Some bat pint glasses would be so sick to be drinking out of. And we maybe we could do a test run, and then if they're any good, we can offer them up to our fine viewers.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Sick. I mean, I would buy a glass like this that has a little emblem on it, you know.
Yeah.
Be cool.
Yeah. Would you guys buy a little glass that's got the little emblem? Let us know. If you're watching this on VOD, let us know in the comments. If you guys, Michael and Get Crow and everybody else in chat tonight, let us know. You know, even if you don't drink beer, would you buy a Battle Axe pint glass?
Yeah, you could drink milk out of these, you know. It's multi-purpose, so it's probably a good investment.
Anyway, we got a fun little topic to talk about. We're going to talk about realism and MMORPGs, and we're going to kind of talk the gamut. Primarily going to talk mechanics that are built into MMORPGs that add a sense of realism to the game. But we're kind of going to break things down. You know, is it good? Is it bad? You know, what is, like, to what extent do you want realism in your MMORPG? And we did get a, I don't know if it was a voicemail or a text, but we did get some feedback. And I think it's something that you and I overlooked when setting up for this is I think we should talk a little bit about visuals too. I think that's important.
Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. But you want to go ahead and talk about what we did this last week and get this show on the road?
Let's get the show on the road.
All right. It's the weekend review. Woo, doggy. Woo, doggy. Last week
Doggy.
was a week. It was a hot week, man. And you had to be out there working in that shit.
Yeah. I'm so beat, man.
Yeah, you
So
didn't even get
beat.
home till like right before stream today, too, right?
Yeah, about an hour before we normally prepare, but we didn't.
I ate dinner
We
with
were
my
a little
family
late on
tonight.
that. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just been, I mean, a Monday, which
See, I don't get that. I never had a case of the Mondays. I never did understand a case of the Mondays. I never did find that Mondays were any different than a Wednesday. Now, Fridays, I could have a case of the Fridays because Fridays, there are two things that were happening. Business was normally slower, and you got to look forward to the weekend. And when you got to look forward to the weekend, it made the last couple of hours before the weekend drag ass.
I think it depends on where you work, and Mondays and Fridays and the company the industry I work in, I guess you could say, it's pretty cluster. Everybody wants to get stuff going at the start of the week, and everybody wants stuff done by the weekend,
Right.
But in any case, yeah. But
So
that's the cool thing about this show is, no matter how the Monday goes, Bat Live happens. So
it
time
does.
for me to drink beer.
Well, when you're done having your drink there, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did last week outside of sweating your nuts off out there in your job?
I don't have much, actually. I have some cool stuff. I'm going to start off with the not cool stuff. I downloaded Spellbreak,
Yeah.
which is a battle royale game.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought maybe this is one I could actually get into because it's all spell casting and it looks cool, and I'm all about cool looking spell effects and things like that. And the game is still in beta, but it's available since December. I'm not going to spend too much time on it other than there's one element of the game that I like that's actually kept me playing, although I haven't played in days because I'm pissed off and I don't like it. That's the end of that. I don't like it.
So you just don't like it, period?
I like the concepts that they have as far as the all the elements mixing and creating more what word am I looking for? More results, and so
like
for
variety of
variety. There you go. If
Okay.
you do wind damage on top of fire damage, something happens. If you do poison on top of ice, something happens. So it's just, to me, that was just kind of neat, especially when you got a battle royale game where just all this shit's happening all at once. I just thought it was cool, but I suck at it. I suck really bad at it, and I just rage quit and haven't been back on it because I'll hit people like one time or two times, and then someone will come around and hit me three times, and I'm instant dead because they can hit me every time. It's kind of one of those projectile based, you got to time your bolt and time your shot and all that.
Yeah, it's not hit scan, right?
And and it's just like, But other than that, I got my home network done, thanks courtesy of your recommendations on how I should do it and what gear to get. So I was up in the hot attic this weekend, drilling holes and running cables and making my own Cat 5 cables. But I got a switch in here, so we can do some live stuff together here without the hassle that we used to have to go through.
Right.
And my roommate's got one set up in his room so he can direct in. Now I'm just gonna have to upgrade my fucking internet. And then my last thing is I started a project, a bat-related project that you and I are working on that I can't say anything about right now.
We're working on a project, guys. It's a project.
But I think it's going to be pretty cool. Absolutely. So I got that rolling out, and we'll see how that goes. And that's it for me, man.
All right, man. Well, that sounds like a super productive week. I mean, you always say you got nothing, but really, I mean, you were. I mean, just the fact that you went into your attic this weekend when it was probably like 110 degrees in your attic, that's pretty impressive, man.
I mean, I thought I was gonna die.
I thought you were gonna die, and I didn't even know that you had done it yet. So, so my week was I don't know, kind of the usual. I actually got a bunch of different PC projects in. So the ones that were sitting on the table last week, as you can see, there's that way. There's a bit of a mess back there because I got a bunch of stuff started. One of the graphics cards I got in was bad. Now, granted, I bought the graphics card knowing that it was listed as being a bad graphics card, but a lot of times you can fix them. But it actually turned out being bad. So one of the projects is in limbo while that graphics card is being listed for parts. And then I've got another machine over there that won't boot after putting in a special MXM graphics card. So for those of you guys that aren't aware, the MXM form factor is what's utilized in laptops with upgradable graphics cards. These days, most graphics cards are soldered onto the motherboard, but some companies are still utilizing MXM, which is like a little small card that's like, you know, yay big, and it looks like RAM connectors on it, and you just slot it in and bang. And I guess the power supply is not pushing enough power to push this NVIDIA Quadro that I bought, so that's sitting over there. Long and the short of it is, I also got a fucking box I haven't even opened over here yet with an HP in it. But yeah, I've got systems that I'm working on, so that's been my week this week. For the biggest part, I rolled a Ranger on Guild Wars 2 and got it to level 80 before the end of the night. So,
Wait, in one night?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
that's how easy it is to level. But Guild Wars. We talked about this the other night. When we talk about more about the journey than the destination, I really don't feel like there's like a set in stone end game. There's just so much to do. You've got World v World, you've got PvP, you've got fractals, you've got dungeons, you've got raids, you've got events that are dynamic and they happen in 50 some odd zones. You've got bounty trains, you've got HP trains, you've got meta events. There is no true like end game in the sense like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14 where it's like go raid. So I really feel that it's a journey. It's not the process of leveling is not meant to take a long time in that game. And we had a comment recently on that. What's up?
Oh, I was going to say, I remember when you were streaming Guild Wars 2 and a lot of the chat conversation going on was, you know, it's all about the journey, you know.
Yeah.
And you were
that's
still
what it is.
fairly new
Yeah.
playing the game, and you were just kind of doing the stories and whatnot. So I just think that what you're saying is, you know, can vouch for it, you know.
There's just so much there. If you go into Guild Wars and with the set path of being like, oh, I'm going to be a raider, you're going to be disappointed because there's raids, but it really is like a little tiny portion of the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's not something that takes, like, you know, you go in and you spend hours and hours one day a week, and then you've got to prep for it the whole rest of the week. It's not like that. But anyway, we had a comment that was addressing that, you know, if you keep, on the last stream, if you just keep making level 80s, eventually you're going to burn out, basically. And if that's what you look forward to, you're really missing out a whole lot on the game. And that's what I'm trying to say with Guild Wars 2. Like, in the past, I've been guilty of leveling other classes, but understand that I always did that from a leadership standpoint to understand the mechanics. Like I was telling you last week with the Guardian, I made the Guardian, I leveled it up just to know what you were going through, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, because I love theory crafting and shit like that. So, you know, to address that concern, I don't think it takes away from it, but I definitely am not, that's not my sole thing that I do. But I did get this Ranger, I rolled him, man, I want to say at like 11:30 in the morning. And before midnight later on that night, I was max level. Next day, I don't know. Next day, I don't remember what. Anyway, I started gearing him, and I got some ascended gear, and it's really fun because he uses a short bow instead of a long bow.
Mm-hmm.
And short bow is all about dot damage. It's all about condition damage, and it's been pretty awesome, man. To walk in and just, you know, just keep hitting, and the attack's so fast. It's just satisfying.
I just want to add, I think it's cool that you're leveling all these different classes because you are working towards your commander. What do you want to call it? Emblem,
the
tag?
tag, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the same time, like you said, you rolled a Guardian. I was playing Guardian. so you kind of know what I'm going through, and you kind of know my choices, you know. But it's like when we talk about MMORPGs and we talk about, like, I was tanking towards the end of my WoW career, but I rode a healer. I didn't get it very high level, but just to know what they have to go through made me a better tank, like, hands down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of neat that you're doing that.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in the past. You know, if you're a healer and you roll a tank, you understand what your tank's going through when you're healing them, and vice versa. You know, you roll different DPS classes, you understand how to synergize. And I'm sorry, guys, I was kind of on a different tab. So yes, I used XP boosters because the account's 2 years old, and I literally have like a mule like full of XP boosters. And the intention wasn't about the leveling process because I've got 12 different level 80s. So I was just trying to get max level character to see if I liked it. I've been struggling with identity issues in Guild Wars 2, and I have all these characters, and I'm not sure which one really fits me as a person. So I was trying to find something, and Soul Beast sounded appealing because the last thing I played when I was playing World of Warcraft was a hunter. And I had put off playing a hunter for years because my wife is a hunter, and my philosophy was if I ever wanted to play a hunter, I could just log into her account and I could play her hunter, and it was no big deal. But when I went back to Legion, she didn't start up with Legion with me. So I rolled a Demon Hunter. I wasn't having fun with it. So I rolled a Hunter because it was the only other class that I hadn't raided with outside of back when we raided Karazhan and stuff like that. I would raid a little bit. But anyway, yeah, so I made that Ranger, and it's been good. It's been a good fit. It's only been a couple days, but I'm having a blast with it. I can see the potential. There's survivability in open world. There's potential there for raid builds, which I don't get on my Necromancer, which really kind of was my main. But I get all that. So I'm pretty excited for it. And Def, like, I'm looking forward to next time we get to play because I want to kind of show you it. It's pretty neat, man, like having a pet and just pumping out lots and lots of Condi damage. But
I want to get into some fractals maybe this weekend.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Some fractals would be nice. And the nice thing about Soul Beast is it's actually one of the metas for a Condi Soul Beast is a meta for doing fractals, tier 4 fractals even. So excited for that. So yeah, I hope that addresses those questions. It's very quick to level in that game. That's not the first character that I've gotten to max level in a single day. I actually had a brand new account that had barely any boosters that I was able to get to max level within 12 hours of gameplay. Not a single day of gameplay, but it took 12 and a half hours of actual playing the gameplay. But yeah, oh, and there's the last thing I did yesterday to risk avoiding like YouTube being super liberal with us. I got my first pew pew, and I feel protected. So that's pretty much the extent of that week. Like, the highlight was I made a Ranger, guys, and it's fun. But that was my whole week, man. Work, Rangers.
You can pew pew IRL and in game.
There you go. Exactly. Oh goodness. But one second here.
Oh, that's
right.
Nico, everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's Nico.
One second. Don't get cats, people. Cats suck. Low maintenance my ass. Anyway, moving along here. So that's that. We have a couple of news topics to talk about. There wasn't anything that was like super stand out because once again we have a new news cycle. So the whole like human malware thing is no longer the focus. And then if you guys are human beings and you exist, you know about the other events that are taking place. But we try to avoid those types of conversations here because we try to keep things lighthearted and talk about things that we didn't know. But unfortunately, when the news cycles are like this, we do have some issues, but why don't we talk about some news anyway?
Do you want to roll the footage first?
The footage? Yeah. I'm going to do this thing right here.
Oh. And now it's time for the Nerd News! Good evening, and thanks for tuning in to this part of the program where we discuss all things technology, comic books, that and more.
There it is. There's the thing. There's the footage. Dude, it's so great. I love it.
Roll that beautiful bean footage, except for it's not actual footage or beans.
Could be. Maybe we could make some bean footage. Anyway. Do you want me to talk about the Attack on Titans?
Considering I'm only, I think, we got to maybe, no, we only watched the first season, so. Okay.
Well, like I've said in the past, my family and I spent a lot of time watching anime together, and one of the ones that we watched was Attack on Titan, and I actually watched it a second time with the family because I watched it the first time by myself, and we just got a teaser for the newest season, which is pretty interesting. Now, I haven't read the manga, but the Attack on Titan is new season looks like it's going to be pretty cool. Some stuff happened at the last event, the previous season, that kind of changed and shifted your perspective of things. So, Eren, which is our main protagonist, is going to be with the Survey Corps, which is, him and his friends that are there, and they're going to be trying to finally, after 4 seasons, give us some story lore. I hope. Because
so is it kind of like, just because I haven't watched it, is it kind of like watching Game of Thrones and finally getting some footage on the White Walkers?
Something like that, yeah. So the first season, as you know, it's a lot of just like a bunch of shit happens,
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, well, where's the meat and potatoes here? And they're all like, nah, you gotta wait. And then season 2 is like, have some meat and potatoes, but still mostly action. And then season 3 is like, it's all meat and potatoes with a little bit of action, but it's not the meat and potatoes that you want. It's like meat and and potatoes. And like, it's like, yeah, yeah, pretty much. Like, it's like they don't give you the full meat and taters. But I'm really excited for that. They did tease a new Titan called the Jaw Titan. That has like a lion's mane, and they've also teased a new smaller Titan, I guess a more human-sized Titan that's supposed to be like super powerful. So I'm pretty curious to see what's going on there. I'm kind of excited for that because Attack on Titan I think is one of those shows that was like overrated, overhyped for a while, but at the same time, like if you low-key go into it just to want to watch something and you're not expecting a whole lot from it, you can actually see the growth in the characters and things like that, because it's one of those stories that, follows a kid who grows into a young man who grows into a man. So and he's got, things going on in his life, and everybody else got things going on. So it's one of those things where it's really nice to watch that character development.
I've always thought that if they made that to a live action movie, that would be so sick. Those little things they shoot up in, and fly around, and you got like what was that movie? Pacific Rim. You had the Jaegers.
Yeah.
Like, so you would have like the Titans, and you'd have these people like, zipping through the air and stuff. I mean, it would just be kind of sick.
Yeah, it would be kind of neat. And I think we've got the CGI capabilities to do stuff like that. Now, it might be a little limited because the nerve gear is kind of like one of those things where like everybody would have to have it. So there'd have to be a lot of wire work, and that seems like it'd be expensive. But
Ruin said there is a live Attack on Titans.
There is, but it's not Hollywood. It's Japanese.
Oh.
And I haven't watched. I've heard it's not bad, but yeah, I haven't heard that it's good either.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
But yeah, so speaking of fantasy, this PS5, dude, have you seen the way the PS5 looks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that weird V shape?
Yeah.
But then we've seen... Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a bunch of memes about it, but I can't remember all the jokes.
Well, there's also like concept art out there that I don't know is just done by people or it was leaked. I know there was a big reveal. I didn't really watch the whole reveal. I just kind of watched my tech news sites or videos, or Jesus Christ, my tech tubers that I watch to get my news. And, they kind of talked about some of the stuff, like originally it was the controller and how the controller is moving things around. So it's basically an Xbox controller and meets, had babies with the Switch controller, and people were all butthurt about it. And I'm like, you gotta evolve the damn controller. Like, we're not playing on N64 controllers anymore.
No, thank God. Those 3 handles are confusing to me. I only have 2 hands. So
You never used the one up here, though.
I know, but certain games you did, and then you're going to play a game, and there's no YouTube back then. You're like, oh, you got to use the D-pad on this game, okay? And then some games were ridiculous. You had to use both, and it's like, what the hell? Anyway.
I just love that meme where like it's all these kids sitting around a TV and they're holding N64 controllers like this instead of like this.
What's funny is I went to someone's house that happened, and then you'd have people that would hold the joystick like this, instead of using their thumbs, and I'm like, what are you doing?
It's like in that picture, it's like, how are you using your Z button? Because that was like the feature of the N64 was the introduction of the Z button.
Yep.
Anyway, getting off topic
right.
here. We want to talk a little bit about the SSD. So Tim Sweeney put out a video talking about how Epic Games is having to make some modifications to the Unreal Engine because the PS5 is going to be running on a best-in-class SSD, and it's going to be such a big deal that it's actually going to change the way game development works because they're going to be able to put more stuff into it in order to there to not be a bottleneck between the CPU and the graphics card. So that's pretty interesting. It's going to use a best-in-class SSD, and the quote was to deliver content with denser and more detailed environments. And specifically what Tim said was there has been a massive effort to upgrade Unreal Engine. And if you guys know, Unreal Engine 5, I believe it was, just came out. But there's been a massive effort to upgrade Unreal Engine loading and streaming to ensure CPU doesn't become a bottleneck. The PS5 has provided much of the impetus, but the work will benefit on all platforms, which is fucking awesome because that means anybody developing for Xbox Scarlet or whatever the hell it's called these days, and any PC, like we're looking at Gen 4 or PCIe 4 for SSD or NVMe capabilities. So like the transfer speeds for drive is becoming insane, and the price points are coming down. And within the next 5 years, everything will be on Gen 4 with Gen 4 support, and we're looking at like those SSDs running 4 times faster than a regular SSD. So, and you remember going from a hard drive to an SSD, what that was like.
Yeah, I'll never forget a couple of years ago when we were playing ESO, and you're like, I need a reboot. And then you were back in 10 seconds, and I'm like, I thought you needed a reboot. And you're like, I did, bro. I'm like, holy shit.
Now, keep in mind that when I quote like 4 times, that's like standard NVMe. Like, that's going to become the mainstream. But I mean, we've seen like not enterprise level, but like enthusiast grade hardware running on AMD platforms. That's like, I want to say it's like 10 or 15 times what an SSD is. So that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited for that, especially since when DDR5 comes out, that's when this rig over here is going to see an upgrade. And I kind of want to pull the trigger now because I want a 3 series processor in it, but I'll stick with my Ryzen 2700X until DDR5 comes out. Yep.
Before we move on, as you're talking about this topic, it's kind of embarrassing. I'm like, I saw this article. I know what you're talking about. And then I realized, well, yeah, because I saw it the other night when we looked it up. Anyway, I was like, oh, man, I think I remember reading about this. But, yeah. Anyway,
dude, the world of PCs is crazy right now. So AMD has been like cores, IPC, blah blah blah, and they finally came into competition with Intel, not just from a productivity standpoint, but gaming. So Intel was like, we're gonna severely overclock the processors that we have because we can't produce smaller, nano cores or whatever. So here you go. Here's a really hot processor that performs 5% better than an AMD processor. It's twice the price. Well, and that's the thing, like because of the competitive market right now, Intel processors have actually come down in price quite a bit. So if you're an Intel fanboy, now's a good time to get into Intel processor. So, and AMD, AMD is still whipping Intel's ass on productivity, but the 10980XE, I think is what it is. It's like 16 core, 32 thread. It's doing really well for what it is, and it's delivering productivity because it has the speeds, because AMD can't hit anything above 4.2 AMD has problems with, and Intel can easily hit 5.1, but it's hotter. Anyway, I'll quit boring you guys with those, the spec talks. I just think it's really interesting because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Intel prices have come down, and when Intel responds, AMD drops their prices because they've got margin to play with. And AMD within the next few months is going to be launching Big Navi, which is going to be their new line of graphics cards, which will take Nvidia by storm. And Nvidia is going to have to drop their fucking 1080 Ti prices from $1,200 fucking dollars for a graphics card down to a few $100, hopefully. So hopefully we'll
Ran
see.
alert.
Oh, dude, it makes me so mad because I had to settle with a 2070. And I wasn't happy with the 2070 because I need 2080 performance to run a 1440p monitor at high frame rate. But I'm just not going to spend $2,000 on $1,000 on a graphics card. $500 wasn't much. I had buyer's remorse for months after I pulled the trigger on my 2070. So anyway, bro, what you got for us today, bro?
I have. Hey, Scribbles, welcome to the chat, man. Let me pull up my notes here. The May Dev Roundtable came out for Pantheon. And it had Chris Joppa Perkins on it. And I really should have jotted down Convo is what they call him. Tim Wathen. I don't know if I'm saying that correct. Sorry,
they call him
Tim.
Convo, like conversation?
Yeah.
Does he talk a lot?
Well, that's the beautiful thing is Chris Perkins was on. And that's kind of what I have here in my notes is how I love it when Chris gets into an interview because beans just start kind of sliding out of his mouth, not intentionally, but I think as gamers and people that are excited for Pantheon, we kind of read between the lines, you know what I mean? But man, so they talk about NPCs and the disposition system a lot.
Okay.
And a lot of the questions, on these roundtables, they answer questions from the forums and whatnot. And man, I don't want to say too much about it, but because I want people to go and give it a listen. But man, we got questing beans, disposition beans, dynamic event beans, climbing beans, storyline beans. So I'll highlight some of my favorite parts of the.
You gonna highlight some of your favorite beans?
Yes, some of my favorite beans. So they asked if, one player asked, or one person asked, would they be able to share quests with a friend? And Chris, kind of answered that in the best way he could. And he was not calling them quests, but tasks. Like you go to an NPC, they give you a task. Well, it's just, that's pretty much it. You go do a task for that NPCs. So depending on if it's a chain, that's whether or not you can, share it with your group mates. Because he wanted to make sure it was clear that with the storylines, he was calling it storylines, which correlates with the, what do you call it? Not the progeny system, the... Perception. Thank you. Perception. Sorry. The perception system. So, and he kind of goes into that, and you guys can check it out. But my favorite part of this whole roundtable was Chris said when P99 Green came out, he was spending whatever free time he had to play it. and it was from a testing perspective. And he went all in, and he was actually trying to get, the rare gear and everything. And a lot of questions came up as far as, camping and camps. And he talks about how they're designing the zones so you don't get this, because a lot of people were saying, like, you're camping this rare item, and everybody wants in. So how do you control that, basically? And so he goes into a bit of about that. But it's just really cool. It was a lot of the questions were overlapping, but like I was saying, when Chris gets to talking, he starts kind of answering some questions. And an example would be someone asked about what if a zone stops getting attention? What if no one goes to that zone anymore? They're still committed to completely open world. You're just all there.
Mm-hmm.
So what if someone doesn't go to the zone? And then the Convo was talking about some of the dynamic events and stuff that they have going on. Like they mentioned Vanguard, about if you're out in the woods and you see an opposing faction NPC and two of them, will they start fighting and stuff like that? And he kind of brought it back to like these zones that don't get no attention anymore. But Chris was talking about that, and he was talking about he called it a player push. So in most MMOs these days, you have this linear progression where you level to 10 in this zone. You go to this next zone that's going to be 15 to 20, and the next zone that's going to be 20 to 25, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about that's going to be very limited in Pantheon, how it's not going to be the case there. And then he and what I mean by beans are slipping out of his mouth, he was talking about, for example, if you try this zone, you complete it, did you forget about the climbing system? He said even internally, it's something that they struggle with to just get in their mind that's a concept, that's a mechanic in the game.
Right.
So it got me to thinking, like maybe you're in this low level zone, but you climb this mountain and there's stuff to do up there, and then there's higher level mobs up there, better loot up there, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say everything, but it's I actually didn't finish the last 10 minutes of it, admittedly, because it's just been a busy weekend. But it's good. I would check it out. Link in the description.
You hear that, guys? Go check it out. Show your love for Pantheon. Get some, inside information from those dev roundtables. I know a lot of you guys in here do follow Pantheon religiously anyway. But yeah, be sure to check those out. Minus does a really good job on Pantheon Rewind over on Pantheon Plus, so you guys should give Minus a look over there. And I say Minus, but I mean it's not just Minus anymore. There's I think Theric is involved full time over there now, and so is
Omega.
Omega is part time, but Micah is with them full time now too. So
yeah.
Be sure to check them out over there, guys. They've got some new stuff going on, and they do a great job covering stuff on the Pantheon Rewind. But again, most of you guys know that, but if you're watching this on a VOD and you haven't seen that, definitely give them a check out, and keep an eye on the Visionary Realms Twitch. It's a good place to get information. Do you want to talk about the Saga subject, or do you want me to go ahead and talk about it?
Well, I'll let you cover it, but I just want to note that it kind of we kind of forgot to mention it, and it was kind of awesome news. It's very cool news.
And I think the reason why I didn't put it in the notes and we didn't talk about it was because we did retweet it and we did share it on our Facebook. So I think many people that follow us would have already seen it. But it is pretty amazing news. And I just want to apologize to Stormhaven and Saga and Ren and everybody over there for not actually bringing this up in Bat Live. But for those of you watching right now and those of you watching on the VOD, Bob Brown, who is the vice president of global sales over at Blizzard Entertainment, has actually agreed to come on as a mentor for Saga of Lucimia. So he's been there since 2000, and for the last 8 years, he has been the vice president of global sales over at Blizzard, and he's going to be mentoring Saga of Lucimia, I guess, on how to the marketability of their product, because from a behind the scenes perspective, we know a lot about Ren and how he does business and stuff that he hasn't really truly talked about on the streams. And it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that takes place, because, Saga of Lucimia is a game that's run and developed by people who aren't AAA developers. They're not people who have come from any major background, and what they're trying to accomplish and what they are accomplishing, from the experience that we've had with alphas, is it's pretty amazing. So what Ren says in the post that he posted that's in the description is, we are very grateful that Bob believes enough in our team and our game to come on board and help make Saga of Lucimia a success. And I think that's awesome, and that's just kind of like another I dotted, another T cross. They've got somebody there that has industry background, like extensive industry background, and supports the idea, which I think is a turning point or a tipping point. I mean, it's not that I didn't think Saga was going to come to fruition regardless, because they've already got the funding, but this just hammers the point home that Saga of Lucimia conceptually is a game that's being set up for success, and we're going to see it, and it's going to be successful, and it's in ways it'll be a major competitor with Pantheon Rise of the Fallen at some point, I'm sure. But I know Ren's intention is for everybody to play both games, because he himself wants to play both games.
He's a fan. It's kind of like Scribbles, who's here in chat. These indie dev developers are fans of the genre, and that's just so cool to see.
Right.
And I could not be happier to be affiliates with Saga, because they're an awesome team. As we have been helping them test the game, and just being a part of that community has been an amazing experience so far. And just to see them to do good, and it's just awesome, man. It's awesome.
And before we move on to the next topic, before we move on to the meat and taters, I do want to kind of address some stuff right now. For one, again, thank you everybody for getting us up to over 1,000 subs. We did get YouTube partnership finally. We've been prepared for that. For those of you who've been following us, that we've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, and really full time for about the last year and a half. And when I say full-time, I mean weekly content when we can. And we finally were able to achieve YouTube partnership thanks to you. Now, with that comes the attempt to try to recoup some of our costs that we put into it, as well as we want to get some new hardware and stuff like that to continue doing what we do and continue growing. So my question is with things being monetized, this particular stream is monetized, and there should be pop-up ads, I think. And I just want to know if that's annoying, if you like that, if it's fine, it doesn't bother you. But watching live, I'm curious if you're seeing that impact. If for any reason you find it bothersome and it is an issue, please let us know, because we're new to this process and I want to know how that works from a live perspective. And then from a recorded perspective, I think it's just anticipated that those will be there, because I think most people just listen to this show in the background. So, but if you guys are watching live, please let us know if it's intrusive, it's annoying, anything like that. But I think without further ado, we should probably,
Hey!
Hey.
Sorry to interrupt, boys, but can we move on to something a little bit more substantial?
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Are you guys ready to get down with a couple bearded idiots who ramble on about random gaming topics? Well, you're in the right place. It's time for the meat and taters.
I need to get like a filter where I can just do that. Just talk like that whenever I want.
Well, it's time for the meat and taters.
Doggy.
I probably would do that too. So yeah, we're moving on to the meat and taters, and that is the segment where we talk about what we came here to talk about tonight, and we're talking about realism and MMORPGs. And man, this is a topic that is extremely broad, so we're going to try to narrow it down. There's not very many notes here to talk about because it is very vague, but I have a feeling that this could go long, so just bear with us. We're going to try to keep it short, but we do want to make sure that we get this discussion in because I think it's important. So what do we mean when we talk about realism? Well, we're talking about things like eating, drinking, inventory management, actually having to camp to log out, actually having to sit around campfires to heal, rather than just being able to have your stuff regen, unless you're a troll, because trolls always do that, okay? We're not asking you trolls to change. And then, those are the big things that we would talk about. And then as you'll hear later from Drac, we want to talk a little bit about visuals too, and how important those are in terms of, and we won't touch on that too much, but I do kind of want to talk a little bit about visuals and stylization and stuff like that. Okay. But yeah, I mean, this is a topic, like, for me, dude, like, I had this discussion with Chris Kane where I wanted to see more AI and more realism in a game, right?
Right.
Like, I want the realism. I want a game like to feel like an alternate world. But as a human being outside of that, external to that game, that has other obligations, I feel like there's a compromise that has to be made. So, why don't we just start with talking about like something specific? So the food and water, like when we're talking about food and water in video games, like and while we're talking about this, let us know what your thoughts are in chat, and feel free to leave a comment if you guys are watching this on VOD. Let us know what your thoughts are on food, water, camping, stuff like that. But what are your thoughts on food and water? Is that something we should still have in games?
I don't know if it was. I don't know who said it. I want to say it was Joppa, but about how it's just no fun. It's no fun having to go to a vendor and buy your food and water. It takes up your inventory space, yada yada yada.
Right.
And I can kind of get down with that. However, I kind of like that. I kind of liked it. So in the beginning of EverQuest, it mattered. Towards the end of EQ, it didn't matter so much. You had AAs to buff up your metabolism and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man. Food and water, things taking up your inventory space, it's kind of ridiculous. And I guess what we need to look at is the overall game design. Like when we look at Saga, and I can talk about this because it was on the stream, and they talk about, you have your backpack, you can't carry 50 breastplates in your backpack if you have a 50 slot bag. Yeah. That's just not something that's realistic. I kind of like that. Now, if Saga was to go with that mechanic and I was getting 50-pound breastplates dropping every minute, I'd be a little pissed off. It's and we'll take it to another example. ESO, it's free to play, but if you don't pay for the game, you don't get trade skill crafting supply bags. You know what I mean? And that that drives me up a wall. I have to pay for the game monthly if I want to play that game because I can't deal with that inventory space,
Right.
And it's like, I guess it's just how they micromanage each little thing, and how does that tie into realism,
Yeah, like I don't know. See, I have mixed feelings when it comes to inventory. Now, food is like I'm with the people that are like food and drink is stupid, but like. Had I not played D&D and then I jumped into EverQuest with you, I'd be like, why do I need to eat and drink? Well, you need to eat and drink in D&D in most or some campaigns. Not everybody really adheres to carry weight and food, or do we find ways to circumvent it when playing D&D? But when it comes to MMOs, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't feel like I need to stop and eat and drink, and the concept is kind of cool that it's there because it adds a level of realism, but I mean, now you're taking up, 10 slots of inventory if you're going on a long day trip to go out and level and shit?
Well, the way EQ'd it is your character automatically ate it. So you're out
Right.
there in the wild, and then you're like, oh shit, I have no food and water right now, so my stam's gonna go down, and
Mm-hmm.
my regeneration and all that's gonna go down.
But even starting your adventure for the day, you had to get food and water in your inventory to eat.
Yeah, and that's what the mindset they wanted you to have. Like before you go out and quest or grind in EverQuest, go to a vendor, stock up on your food, and it was kind of like raid prep in WoW too. Like have your food stat buffs, have your elixirs, have your potions, and all that.
Except that when we were playing, you were just eating to eat and drinking to drink.
Yeah.
But like Project Gorgon is similar, but all the food there gives you buffs. You don't just eat to eat. Like it might just give you a little bit of health, like stamina or HP or whatever the hell it's called in that game. I forget. But all the food, even the level 1 food, gives you some sort of buff. So you want to eat, right?
Right.
So I mean, I can get down with that. But what I can't get down with is why when you're in the game, you've got to eat so much. Like I feel like the way it should be done is they should encourage you to eat, drink, and sleep in a communal fashion. So you should want to go to an inn, and if you can't get to an inn, you're setting up camp, and you're in a zone where other people are running through, so they stop by. Like back in the day, the olden times, like if you're riding on horse and buggy, and somebody was camped on the side of the road, well, it makes more sense for 2 people to camp together to fight off the coyotes and the wolves, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And kind of share stories, and it's nice to have someone to talk to after you've been on the road all day. And that's where I think that we need, like Saga did that really well. I don't know if they're still continuing to do that, but in one of the earlier alpha tests, you saw it when they were playing, and you had the campfires. Well, in this case, you would go back to the inn. Well, we've got the campfires now, which have been showcased in a lot of the newer streams, and I do like that. I really like the idea of everyone sitting around a campfire, and it's not instantaneous. I don't like how long it takes sometimes, but I'm sure that some tweaks or improvements will be made. But I do like the fact that you have to sit down and regen your food, and you don't regen your health and stamina by hanging out at a campfire, and then you might just carry 1 stack of food and like a canteen with you.
When you talk about realism, also in Saga, when you sit around that campfire, it gets rid of any debuffs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like gather with the tribe, tell stories, lift your spirits, and then go back out to battle. That's what I thought was kind of neat about that.
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be done, because I think that's what the intention was initially. I don't think the intention was fill up your bags with food and water and hope you don't starve to death while you're out there just trying to, XP.
Yeah.
But inventory management, like that's like one of the big topics that was going around was coin weight. Like, I don't know, like I can understand coin weight, but like I feel like there could be an alternative too, like, paper fundage or something like that. Because, we have credit cards, man, and you could have $1 or you could have $1 million. And if you got a debit card on you, it always the same,
Yeah.
So you started on the path of inventory. Like, what are your thoughts, not just from the coin weight perspective, but like inventory management? Like, how do you think, like, what have you seen that has added, realism in previous games that you think could be rectified in future games by making some changes?
I'm not going to have a good answer, Punk. I'm going to have the answer that I hate inventory with a passion. Yeah. I don't care if it's real or not. I hate it. But at the same time, that gives me something as a player to work towards, like bigger bags, things like that. In all seriousness, I think Saga is a really good example on it puts you in this situation like, do I really need to loot that? Do I really want that? Because you're out there in the woods and you got to hope you don't die. If you die, you have to go back and collect your bag. It gives you that sense of everything that you loot is kind of like a gamble,
So it's like there's a value to things that are in your inventory space. But I think there's also the compromise of like, I mean, I guess that's the question. So the question here is realism, or the discussion is realism. Like, does that matter? Like, is that something people want? Because when Joppa was talking about food and water and why they're not going to be doing it the traditional way and Pantheon, because it's just not a fun concept. It's not something that's fun. And I don't think that, to me, is entirely fun. I shouldn't have... I mean, I worked for that loot, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I worked for that gray dagger that I can vendor for 50 copper. I killed that mob. I RNG'd the shit out of that and got that really cool white or gray dagger that can be vendored, you know? And I should be in a position where I shouldn't have to go, do I want to take that dagger? Like, I could see implications like I took that dagger and now I get minus 10 faction because... You know, not only did I kill the corpse, I looted the corpse of, you know, this faction. But I mean, I shouldn't have to make that. I mean,
to an extent, gave me an interesting idea. If you were, say, if you were to loot a dagger off a tribe of that belonged to whatever faction, you go sell that. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe you get a little faction hit for selling that. You know.
Yeah, like we had ESO. Like when you stole stuff, remember you had to take it to a fence.
Yeah.
To sell it. Maybe it's like that. Like if you murdered somebody, you got to fence that dagger instead. But I mean that, like, I don't know. Like I'm. So here's my thought process. You have bags, but you don't have bag weight per se. Like you can't put a truck in your bag and just because it's a magical bag and no longer has this particular weight limit or it's an extended weight limit, now I can shove a fucking half-ton truck into my bag, you know? No, it's one of those things where, like, you know, there's space, right? You know, I don't have a bag or anything. Yeah, I do. I got a bag right here. This bag is meant to hold an action cam. And I could probably put my vape in this bag along with my phone in this bag. But I'm not going to turn around and shove this whole beer in that bag. You know what I'm saying?
You might could fit it in there. But, you know.
Well, I mean, I could, but not with the phone and the vape. You know, I got to make those decisions that you were talking about. You know, I got to decide: do I really want to take the beer with me, or do I just leave the vape behind? It's going to run out of batteries anyway. But like, I like the idea of like Path of Exile, Diablo, where when you put something in your bag, it takes up what looks like that object. You know,
the checkerboard thing. Where yeah.
So if you've got a ring, you're like, oh, it's a ring. It takes up, you know, this much space in the bag. If you've got a phone, well, it takes up, you know, this many slots in the bag. So that's kind of the way I see it. And then once that fills up, you've got to decide what you're doing. Like, and what's great is you can play like legitimate Tetris with it and try to get everything that you want to fit and start making those decisions to dump stuff. But you should have the ability to grow those bags with time, or as your strength increases. See, that's where the compromise is. It's like, do you utilize strength? Go ahead.
Well, man, you got me on something here. As an hardcore Path of Exile player in the past, I loved that. I hated it at first because it was new to me. I didn't know what the hell this was, you know. And I did exactly that. I had to play Tetris, you know, and you know, determine what am I going to drop, blah, 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 blah. And I like that style of inventory management better than looting a bunch of crap, going into your bags, and then, you know, spending 30 minutes after. Now, I know we talked about this, just you and I, in the past, like how that was so cool. It was a part of the MMO experience, you know. You've been questing or grinding or whatever, and you go back to town and you sell all your items and you sort out your inventory and all that, and that was just part of the game mechanics. That's what you did, you know. But I really like that, and you said something. So in EverQuest, I know Turin mentioned weight capacity too. So if you were a monk, you couldn't be over, I think it was 15 pounds of stuff on you, or you would lose armor class. And then you said something about if you had more strength, you know. So what if there was a game that had the checkerboard mechanic, but the more strength you got, you know, 4 more blocks, or you know.
But does that really correlate with space? And that's what I was about to say. Like, if you have the strength, like, why should strength be represented in bag space? It should be represented in carry capacity, and that's maybe. Go ahead.
Because you're not a weak little bitch, you know. You got.
So instead of putting it in the bag, are you just carrying it on your ass cheeks because they're so ripped? You know, you got fucking Kardashian booty, so you can carry that extra spell book on one of your butt cheeks while you're walking.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my thought process on realism in MMOs. Like how to the T can you get it? Because it's fantasy,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's fantasy. So, like Saralyn, I think said, is that a magic bag that you were holding up? You know what I mean? Like, is it like Santa Claus bags where you can pull out, surfboards and,
No, I can't even get my hand into it.
well, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's hard. Like, when it's fantasy, it's kind of bending all the rules of reality.
Right.
So it's kind of like however they spin it, and I guess the debate tonight is when does realism become not fun, and when is it, make you feel like it's real,
Right. So like what is the point? Like I think that's what you have to think of is like at the end of the day, this is a video game and these are the mechanics that are put in place. And before I continue, Michael, yes, I agree with you on that point. When we were playing EQ and you just put food in your bags and basically forgot that existed. But, that was retail when we were playing. Like, you couldn't do that on P99. You had to keep track of it. But when we were playing retail and Def and I were just screwing around and he was power leveling me and stuff, you just put the food in your bags and just forget that you had to eat. And then one day, like he said, you're like, oh, I have no food. I need food.
Yeah, and we also had money. I also had money just to load you up with it,
Yeah, we had a whole bunch, like several stacks of food and several stacks of water. But yeah, so like this is a mechanic. Like these are mechanics that are put into place. What is the purpose? Why did they want you to eat and drink in an MMORPG? Why is there a weight limit? Is it just because, I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow when I was playing D&D, so now you got to do that from a digital perspective? Or was it a mechanic that was built in? I can see... so the Saga of Lucimia mechanic is even when you're out in the world, even if you don't die, you're just out there doing shit, but you get fatigued. You start to lose stamina, which means you can execute less and less abilities, which makes sense. Think about it. You're out in a field working all day. Just because you take a break every once in a while doesn't mean you're well rested. You got to go home and you got to get some sleep. You got to sit around that campfire and relax, man. All work, no play makes, in this case, Johnny a dead boy because he ain't got no stamina.
You just gave me an idea, dude.
What's that?
So we kind of talk about how we love the old school way. We love the old school MMOs. That's what we grew up on. That's kind of our passion.
Right.
But what if we talk about just how as grown ass people we don't have time to stay at the top. We don't have time to stay with other people who can just play and play and play.
Absolutely.
So we talked about all that. But what if a game that was real as shit was that if that was their way of, let's say Joppa is talking about a 2-hour play window. What if that's what he's talking about? I doubt it. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying, but what if after that 2 hours, you got to go camp. You got to get some rest. You done wore yourself out.
Yeah. But who are they to tell me how long I can play? If I want to play 2 hours and 15 minutes, I want to play 2 hours and 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe you got to get better strength and stam and endurance and all this stuff to play longer. I don't know. It's probably a bad idea, but I'm just saying. That's just came to my mind. Like,
well, that does make sense mechanically, though. Like, send people back to town, and then you're running back to town. Your inventory's full. And there's got to be some compromises there too. About something else I wanted to bring up here. But anyway, you get to town and you see Larry and Jimmy and Bella sitting over at the table over there, and you're like, God, I hope they don't see me. Because you know all about them. You don't want them to hey, what's up, punk? You want to join our group? And be like, fuck off, Larry. Fuck off. Just go away. You just get out of here. No, like you go there and Billy Bob, he's having a beer at the bar. and talking to one of his boys, and he's like, yeah, man, we came across the Hydra and this and that. And you sit down and you start talking and bullshit, and you realize, you know, you're both been focusing on archery skill, and you're level 45 and he's level 47. You guys got some stories to share. And then you start talking about some other skill sets that you've been trying, and then he's like, oh, dude, you know, I should try that. Why don't you try this one? And next thing you know, you're building relationships. And that's the one thing that we talk about when we talk about MMORPGs is it's really, truly about meeting people and about community. And that's the whole point of it. And when we talk about lengthy gameplay, well, like the epiphany that I had when we were talking last time is like, it's not for us. It's for the younger people. But I don't necessarily agree with that from a community perspective. Like, I think there's no reason why you can't have a 2-hour time slot where you play and still make friends and meet like-minded individuals. 100%. So, yeah. Now, when we talk about inventory management in the field, like, how do you address that, though? Like, so I do kind of like the idea of having to make choices. I mean, I hate it because I feel like if I worked for it, I should be able to loot it. But I also think about the fact that if you are one of those people that picks up cans to recycle and you only got one bin and you walk X amount of hours away from the house and you filled up and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home. And on the way back, you pass another 25 cents worth of cans. Well, what are you going to do with that 25 cents worth of cans? Just kind of leave them, right? So, I mean, they might be there when you walk back, but they might not be too.
Well, in that situation, you know me, I'm a hoarder. I'm going to pick up those cans, stick them in my back pocket, man.
But then your back pockets are going to be full when you find another can.
I know, and I hate that. Like, well,
exactly.
I hate that.
So that's how it's going to be. Like, that, I kind of, like, I hate that because you worked for it, right? But the realism is that you have to make that decision. And the person who wants the realism in the games, that person that's in here that wants that, agrees with that logic. That makes sense. Why, if I found a rusted butter knife on the ground and I'm walking back and I find a fucking, you know, genuine Bowie knife, am I going to be like, well, I'm going to try to carry both of these and keep having the Bowie knife poke me in the pocket because the fucking butter knife is taking up too much room? Or not be able to pick it up because I got pockets full of other shit? You know, I'm going to take that soda can out of my back pocket, put the Bowie knife in my back pocket, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I could see that. So you find you find a gray or white. I could see leaving that behind to pick up another object, and maybe okay, I threw away a 2-slot dagger. I'm going to put a 1-slot ring in here that's a little bit higher quality, and hopes that I find something else to fill that slot before I make it back to town. That way, I can maximize my inventory space.
Right.
So, and that's what we did in Path of Exile and Diablo, right?
Yep.
You're like, God damn it, I don't want to throw this green dagger away, but that's a fucking legendary ring. I gotta pick it up.
Yeah, and as I played MMOs more and more and game hopped and switched, and you know, I just become so jaded to certain items. Like if I have a purple item that drops and I have to drop a blue item that I could have sold for 2 gold or whatever, I don't sweat it anymore. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, don't want to do this. But I just do it, and I just don't sweat it, you know, like I used to, you know.
So it looks like chat is really blowing up about mounts. You want to talk about mounts for a second?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
So what are your thoughts on mounts and realism? Is it something that you think breaks realism, or is it something that contributes to it? Is it a good, bad? Does it matter? Like, what do you think? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but...
Yeah, I personally wish mounts were just so fucking rare. I wish it was so RNG that you see maybe 5 people on a mount in your whole experience of that game session. You know what I mean?
In a session.
In a session.
Okay.
In a session.
And you know that person.
I don't know if we're talking about ground mounts or fly mount.
Let's talk specifically about ground. Let's pretend flying mounts don't exist because that's so outside of. I mean, you could potentially in a fantasy realm have that, but let's talk about horses. Just horses. Let's use horses specifically. Mm-hmm.
Horses are an essential part of any fantasy universe I've ever read about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, I think it takes away from all the work that the devs did, but I think it's something that is, and it's not anymore, but it's bragging rights. I mean, I had to save up a lot of platinum in EverQuest to get my mount. I mean, a lot of plat. I don't remember how much it was, but it took me, I don't know, a year worth of just saving up and selling stuff, and
Right.
that was a huge accomplishment for me. And as time went on, of course, getting a mount is nothing, you know. Like, they basically give you one, and I hate that. I hate MMOs that just give you one. Like, you get to level 20 on WoW, you got a mount. If you have the chauffeur heirloom thing, you get a mount. You know, it's just given.
Well, what if it's like BDO, where you get a mount, and it's a mount, but it's not like the greatest mount? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't like it. It doesn't feel. It doesn't have any value to me.
That mount doesn't.
Right.
And that's kind of the point. So what Saralyn's saying specifically, to me, realism mounts, to me, for realism, mounts should be common as hell and toned down in power. And I can see that perspective. I still think that not every 10-year-old should have a horse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you get old enough and you work for it and you buy yourself a horse, I think there should be a price point associated with that. And it should be achievable by every player in a reasonable amount of time. But I don't agree that you should get a tier 4 horse that can run the Kentucky Derby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe, right, you know, it's 10% movement speed bonus. And if you're in a stand-based world, maybe you can ride your horse until it starts to, you know, run out of stamina. And then you can stop running and just kind of trot. You know what I mean? And it helps you get from point A to point B without having to camp as much, but you still have to do it. Not until you spend 30,000 ducats or whatever on a Kentucky Derby horse can you get from one town to the next in a single day kind of thing. But anyway, go ahead.
You know what? The Guild Wars 2 system, I never played Guild Wars 1. That was a good way to do mounts. You start off, your first mount is going to be a raptor. Then you have that mount's mastery lines. So when you say, how about the mount in BDO that you start out that's just not great, I could get down with that if there was some kind of progression into that mount to work on, you know, like skill lines and stuff like that. That would be kind of cool because, I mean, hell, they threw Frodo on a horse, you know what I mean? Like it's just an essential part of any kind of fantasy story, you know, like you don't travel across the whole freaking planet without a mount, you know?
Right.
But as a game designer's perspective, I could see how you pass by a lot of things that the devs worked hard on and they want you to experience and get you immersed and stuff. So I don't know, there's got to be that kind of balance, you know what I mean?
And that's where, like, if the alternative is going from a walking speed to a speed walk for further distances because your horse has stamina, you still take all that in. And then by the time you can afford that Kentucky Derby horse, none of that shit matters because you've already seen it 100 times, you know?
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to bring up next.
But if you're riding a Kentucky Derby horse, it's still a horse. It's not an airplane. So you're running through that shit faster. So you're like, da, 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 but that still gives you the opportunity as you're, you know, quickly running out of the corner of your eye to see that dynamic boss that spawned and see 2 low levels over there trying to kill it, that you're just like, yeah, whoa, go over there and fight the thing. And Michael, a lot of what Saralyn has said is already in place in Black Desert Online. So you start off with a mule, and then you can get a horse, and then you can breed those horses, and then you can sell those horses as breeding stock or for someone to use. And eventually you can get up to like tier 4, tier 5, I think even tier 6 now. And you get different appearances, you get different strengths, you get different abilities on them. You can ride the horse. When you ride the horse, you have to train the horse. When you're out there riding the horse can run out of stamina. When you get to your destination, you have to tie up your horse, and your horse can be killed by NPCs or player killers, because the game, after you hit a certain point, is a full open PK game, and somebody can come up and just kill your horse. And wagons are a thing too. You can get wagons in that game. So like Saga of Lucimia had talked about this in some of their past streams, interviews, and stuff. It's something that they wanted to have was like mules. And that's why the inventory is so small in that game, is because there was the talk of mules. I don't know if that's still the case, but like I thought that was kind of neat. But I also kind of sucked when I was out and I was doing a quest and I came back and someone killed my horse. It was really shitty.
Yeah.
Like you can revive the horse, but everything that you had in that inventory is kind of lost. So I mean, I think that's cool in a sense of realism. And I think all that's awesome, but you got to think about the time that takes to develop. You got to think about the time management for that. That's a whole nother aspect of the game, that if you're on a 2-hour time limit every night, that's one more thing that you got to do just to be able to go play the game. So
yeah.
I mean,
and back to what I was saying is when I was talking about it needs to be rare as shit, I'm talking about flying mounts.
Yeah.
Like that's a little overboard for me. A ground mount, I'm all about it. I mean, it's just, I get on the game, and if I want to travel from Doohickey Forest to Fondue Desert, I'm going to have a lot of traveling to do,
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about fast travel turn before, and yeah, Guild Wars 2, there's just portals everywhere. It kind of makes it kind of funny, but I think the portals are more obscure, right, in higher level zones. Punk, can you attest to that?
Yeah, and some of the newer content, you have less and less waypoints, and
Yeah.
it's not like you can just move around. You got like one waypoint to get to the zone and maybe one more across the other side of the zone. It's not like in lower level zones where it's like every 10 feet there's a waypoint.
Yeah.
But we did do a video where we talked about fast travel, and if you guys really want to hear more about this topic, I think we talked for like an hour and a half on this, and it's definitely a good discussion. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but from a realism perspective, I can agree. I feel like horses should be accessible, but not everybody's going to own a private jet,
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes a lot of sense to have accessible mounts. It also makes sense to make them where they're not just a run speed boost, where there's actually some sort of mechanism. And I think there should be more advanced horseplay. For those people that want to get into that, like I did with BDO, because like that was the thing I really enjoyed, was horse breeding and horse training. Like there should be that part of the game where people are going, just like any craft, you're going to have to sacrifice doing something else to train your horses. But then in turn, someone like Def, who may not like horse training, can take advantage of my horses, and he's my friend, so I can be like, yeah, you can borrow a horse and buggy. I know you're going to Fondue Desert over there, because you're looking forward to some fondue. And take my horse and buggy. You can get there in half the time, and you can camp safely in it without any coyotes eating your face.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I would appreciate that.
You're welcome to my horse and buggy, bro. Any day.
Thank you.
So, I think one of the last topics we wanted to talk about, which was like a real big one, and it's something that, again, Saga of Lucimia has addressed from a story perspective or lore perspective, but I think that's something that a lot of games don't think about, and that is the Day Zero hero. And you know what I mean by that, Def?
Yeah.
So,
I do.
Guys, what do we mean by Day Zero hero is every fantasy game that you've ever played, like 98% of them, you have something special about you. You're a special person. You can start off the game and you have something about you. Even in Project Gorgon, which is one of those games that has so much depth to it mechanically, you still have, the starting story is you are still kind of like a chosen person. Whereas
The Rise Champion.
yeah, and it's every game, and I don't understand why, like, I was not born a hero, and I don't understand why every game has to be cliche hero. I want to earn my heroic status, like when you become a commander in Guild Wars 2. Like, that's just playing the story, and you're not necessarily, like, you're kind of a chosen one in the sense that, like, you already have the aptitude for things, but you're not like super magic, chosen by the gods, you can resurrect, so on and so forth sort of thing. But I still don't think they hit the nail on the head. I think that, Saga of Lucimia, when you die, you don't actually die. you know, you get bonked on the head and someone dragged your corpse back to the city, and you have to go retrieve your backpack. And you can choose to forfeit your backpack if you like, but you don't physically die. Whereas you also have these other games that were like, you are died, and you can run back to your corpse through the magical realm because the gods have allowed you to stay within purgatory until you find your corpse, you know, like... Or fucking Rift, where they're all like, you have been chosen by the gods, you can never die, you will always come back to life, you know?
Yeah, and I think, wow, it's like every dialogue is, at last, champions, you have found the great core that will free
Dumbledore?
I didn't want to say that, but yeah, on there. But you know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of like that in every single game. What was that wet noodle game we played?
Skyforge. Literally,
You know,
everyone was a god.
everyone was a god. You know, like it's just kind of, and it kind of when we talk about in the past character identity, it's kind of like, oh, I'm straight up a hero right out the gate. You know, that's not realism. You know,
Like, if everyone's a hero, do you feel like a hero? I don't think you do. But I think if you put in 1,200 hours into the game and you have a pretty decent reputation in the community, you've done your, we didn't call them, they're not quests, what are they again? Tasks. You've completed tasks, so you've built renown throughout the world of NPCs. The players know who you are, and, you know, you're a hero. You might not have, like, you might not be within the top 100 of the realm, but you're still a hero because you've worked for it. But it's also okay to just be the local leather worker, you know?
yeah.
And you could be the most badass leather worker. That could be your reputation. Why do you have to be a hero? It could, you know, that needs to be your choice. Like, oh, I am the local blacksmith. I once smashed my testicles and died and came back to life. You know? Like,
Wow,
fuck
that's a
all
freaking
that.
hero, though, man. I want to share my hero experience in any MMO, and I've shared this before, and I'm gonna share it again. It was on my XR monk, going to Crushbone at higher level, and just mowing through orcs for days on end, just so I could go to the Wood Elf starting area in AFK. And just the tells I would get, you know, when I would come back to my computer, is like, oh man, how many orcs did you have to kill? How many orcs did you have to defeat? Like, how long did it take you? Like, that's so awesome, you know?
You
And
felt
I'm
like a damn
sitting
hero,
there-
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sitting there with my Monk 1.0 Epic, my Celestial Fist just whirling in my hand, and the AFK, I'm sitting down, so I'm like on my feet, squatted down, you know, and just between two guards. Like, to me, that was like, I was a hero of the Wood Elf people, of all of Kelethin and all of Butcher Block. You know, I was gained on my faction enough to the point to where I could walk into Butcher Block and turn in belts. You know what I mean?
That's
you know,
awesome.
It's not that cool these days, because the rewards of it was I just can't get attacked by guards, even though I could kill guards because I was higher level. But it was that sense of a hero that I've ever felt, you know.
Yeah, see, and like I don't have a whole lot of that. I mean, I have my raiding days, or my, like, you know, my tier 2 artifact armor and Final Fantasy, but my raiding days were the big ones when, like, you know, old WoW, when you were sitting around on tier 6 and not very many people were raiding tier 6 25-man content. Most people were doing the 10-man stuff, and you know, you get those tells. You go take a 20-minute break to go outside and, you know, take in some fresh air, and you come back and you got 3 tells. Oh my god, you look so badass. But like, I don't think you get that at all in games anymore. And from a hero perspective, like, I don't feel like you have to work for anything anymore. Like, it's a matter of, like, I just played my obligatory 2 hours. It wasn't necessarily efficiently. It wasn't, you know, necessarily in a way that was designed to take advantage of those 2 hours to their fullest extent, which I guess is still efficiency. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't want to wake up a hero. What's up?
This brings me back to nerd news when I was talking about the Pantheon Roundtable. and Joppa got into talking about having to farm this one item and how everybody wants that item because there's no item like that in the game. And I'm talking about the Mana Stone. He used several examples. There's no item like that in the game. So if someone has that item, they're a freaking hero. They're a freaking beast. They're somebody because they have that item. And that's what he goes into more on talking about. When we talk about realism, like how do developers manage that? Like how do they and they gave several options. But do you do like a knockoff version of it that drops somewhere else?
No.
Do you make it drop multiple times? Like how do you manage that? How do you keep people from rioting in MMOs? You know what I mean? Like going crazy and stealing camps, and if you die, he actually mentioned this. If you've been camping a mob for 24 hours and it pops and you die and someone's waiting there and they kill that mob, that's a bad day, man.
You're bringing back flashbacks of camping the freaking dunes trying to get my stupid emperor's hairpin.
Yeah, man, but that's a bad day, man.
It is a bad day. I mean? It's a terrible day.
But we're talking about realism here. Like if you want to be the guy that has that one item, like it's tough. It's tough to design a game that is strictly real, in my opinion.
And, well, in that case, I don't think it's that hard. Like you create a quest, and you put something in game that gives people ample time to know when this quest is going to come forward. And any of you guys have seen Sword Art Online, you know what I'm talking about. So you have guilds and shit that are competing for this quest to get this one item, and maybe it only spawns in game every 3 months. And the story that goes along with it is maybe, you have to do all this pre-quest that leads up to it. And then the quest is like, okay, here's a legendary quest that you have to do, but you're going to discover the cache of the gods or something like that. And it's protected and you have to prove yourself. And once you prove yourself, the guardian of the tombs or the cache or the vault, whatever, is like, you may choose one item. And that item isn't named. It's just like, you choose it, and it's just like godly potato of spell power. I don't fucking know.
Okay.
But just something like that, so that way it's not like a unique in terms of name, but like maybe make it so you can name it something else, or maybe, you know what I mean? Like that was one thing about MUDs that I loved. I used to have all my gear had custom names because you could rename your items. But from taking it back, I got on a little tangent there. But
sorry, my bad.
No, that was my bad. But in terms of realism, though, like Zero to Hero, everybody loves that story. Everybody wants that story where they start off as nothing and become a hero. The thing is every game has put in this mechanism that makes you go from zero to hero because you've got some innate, like, standout thing about you that makes it where you can become a hero easier. It's not through hard work and dedication. Yes, some hard work and dedication is required, but you innately already have that, that +1, if you will. You've already got that. There's a word for it. I forget what it's called. But anyway, you're already predestined.
Right.
And like nobody wants. Like, I don't think many people want that. People want a reason why they become a zero to hero. People want to go from zero to hero, but I don't think day one hero is how, me personally, I don't want that. I want to feel like Punk, who builds computers and has kids and takes care of his family, is now suddenly, the governor of the state and making major decisions,
Yeah.
And that's just how I see things. And we'd like to know, like, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Like, what do you think about Day Zero Hero? Like, what do you guys think about that process? Do you like that to be the thing? Do you want to just, whatever? Like, do you want to be able to just be Hero Man? So I don't know. Like, and some questions that we have for you guys as we start to kind of close this out is like, what are your thoughts on the time investment for realism? Like, this is some stuff we want to talk about. We're kind of running out of time here, though. But so let us know what you think. What are your thoughts on the time investment to have that realism? Like, if you want that reality and it's something that slows the game down, like eating food, having to eat food, having to drink, having to camp, having to form groups because every single thing in the game is party-based and there's nothing you can do solo in your 2 hours of gameplay, or that 1 hour you might be able to jump on because you had a busy week. What are your thoughts on that realism versus the reward? And does having the realism actually make it more challenging? And I'm curious, this is something I just want to talk about real quick. Do you think having realism makes it more challenging, or do you think it's just something that's put into the game as a time sink?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I think it makes it more challenging.
Yeah, see, I think having to execute mechanics on a boss fight is a challenge. I think having to figure out the most efficient way to the next city, I think, which path is the best one for my horse so he uses the least amount of stamina, I think that's challenge. I think my horse's stamina is going to go down at the same rate no matter which way I take, so I have to stop 4 times no matter which route I go. I think that's a time sink, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, greatest example is the EQ Epic quest line, like just having to show up, having to be there, having to, it is a time sink, no doubt about it. But it's just the work you have to put in to make sure you're there, to make sure you're the first one to tag the mob and to claim that camp and to claim your area. It's a challenge, but at the same time, if you can defeat that mob over and over and over, then it's not much of a challenge. It's just a matter of having the time to do it. So right. I guess I could see what you're saying is it is more of a time sink, but when you get that end result, you feel like you've earned something special.
So the challenge comes in the fact that you've had to learn how to utilize that system or mechanic efficiently.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and I can see that. That's a valid, 110% valid argument. Well, I kind of want to close out this topic this evening with leaving it in the hands of you guys. What do you think? All of these things that we've talked about in terms of realism, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that come with them. Do you think that one way or the other, it keeps us from playing certain MMORPGs? I can tell you a lot of our friends will not play EverQuest with Def and I because of those realism mechanics that are built in. They don't want to sit and rest. They don't want to eat and drink. They want to just jump in and play their game because they're used to WoW, they're used to Final Fantasy, they're used to Rift, they're used to BDO. Like, they don't want to play EQ with us because of those mechanics. So just curious what your thoughts are. Let us know in the comments. Feel free to discuss as we kind of wrap things up here. But I think that's a very interesting discussion piece. It's like, does it keep you from playing a game that you would otherwise enjoy if it didn't have a piece of realism? And then vice versa. If this game was more realistic, would you play it if it were more realistic? And when we talk about graphics, I think that's a topic that could be discussed in the future, because I think that's more in depth, because you have a lot of things to talk about graphics, and this was already so vague. I think we could probably go on for another hour. And unfortunately, people have to be to work in the morning and things like that. But I think a graphics discussion is something we can talk about in the future. And I kind of wanted to set this up so that way we address the concerns of the voicemail. Is it a voicemail we got or a text?
It's a text.
So I wanted to address the concerns of this text. So we'll go ahead and you want to jump into that here in just a second?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's roll it.
Oh man, this is such a juicy rant topic.
I'm sorry.
Hello?
But the person you called
Hello?
has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Goodbye.
Oh, what the hell, guys? Voicemail, texts, and assholes.
All right, this is our voicemails, texts, and assholes. This is the segment where you can reach out to us and you can leave us a voicemail, you can leave us a text, you can leave us a video. You're more than welcome to send us a YouTube link where you've uploaded a video of yourself just ranting, a Twitter video, an Instagram video, whatever. Just if you want to reach out to us, let us know. And let us know what you're thinking, and we'll get you that information at the end of the stream. And bro, I'm so sorry I still didn't get that cool commercial that we did integrated into the intro yet, or the outro.
Oh, it's cool, man. It's cool.
But I want to tell you guys, and I want to give a huge shout out to, you guys are all awesome, but Drac Attack has been on the regular. He shoots us a text every week for the most part, or leaves us a voicemail if you can't make it to the stream. He's on those VODs. So I want to give a huge shout out. Shout out to you guys that are here every week, but also a huge shout out to Drac for contributing and giving us those voicemails, because they give us other pieces of things to talk about. And we'd love to see you guys that are in here regularly listening and watching reach out to us and do the same. So we've got some other things to talk about, because we'd like to talk about more than just what's the topic at hand. Like, I'd love to hear your rants on how that new flavor of Lay's potato chips is absolutely garbage. So like, those are sorts of things that we'd love to talk about. But why don't you go ahead and read what Drac sent us this week?
Drac says, here we go. Realism in MMOs usually leads to things looking dated. I want to play my MMO for at least 5 years. In that time, graphics cards will be updated a bunch, so you either have to update your graphics as you go along, which games rarely do, or it just has to look old. I prefer a stylized approach. WoW does this really well. The game is old, but still looks good. Sorry for my broken English on that. I was having trouble reading.
But I think he's got a valid point. So what Drac is saying is like, in 1999, a PlayStation game tried to create realistic graphics, and then in 2000 and whatever, the PlayStation 2 came out and was able to produce better graphics with backwards compatibility. So when you slap that game in there, it didn't make your game look any better. The new Final Fantasy looked better than the old Final Fantasy. Very much in the case that EverQuest 2 looks a lot better than EverQuest 1, right? And one of the things is they weren't able to update the EverQuest 1 graphics because of the engine that they're utilizing. So
yes.
So if you really think about it, like, if you were to go ahead and just straight up out the gate stylize your graphics, Fortnite, World of Warcraft, Borderlands, those are stylized graphics, right? Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy 14 is, in a way, I think it's very stylized. I think some things do have a sense of realism, like trees and things, but
Overwatch is a good example.
Overwatch too. So your game could be 10 years old and it could render those cartoony graphics, or you just have to make some small modifications with higher resolution textures. But because you stylized it from the get-go and you didn't shoot for that realistic look that couldn't be produced when that game came out, and you tried to create it's kind of like modern games trying to create trees. No tree looks real. Like, if you get close enough to it, it doesn't look real. No game you play does a tree look so real, unless it's going to if it's a CGI rendered video, or it's something that uses a ton of horsepower. Like, your regular Intel integrated graphics is not going to be able to render a tree that looks like anything decent. Your 2060 might render something that looks, realistic in a way, but when you get close, the realism isn't there because they've pulled and plucked out pieces and stylized parts of it so it looks like a tree, but it's not a tree.
Well, if I may,
Sure.
my opinion, I agree with Drax, but at the same time, it's not everything to me.
Fair enough.
I like the fact that if it's stylized, it can be more long lasting, but I can go back and play EverQuest and have a ball anytime, because now that is a nostalgic thing, that's a childhood thing, that's just a fanboy thing. I will admit that I'm biased. I'm very, very biased, because I was just looking at the P99 group in Facebook, and someone's posting memes, and I'm looking at the buffs, and I'm like, I remember that buff icon, it's just a square of a boot, but to me, like, oh man, that meant something to me, you know what I mean? Those days are long gone, the days of everything being new. So I think In today's time, that is very important. It is very important. So let's say Saga comes out, Defend the Night, Pantheon, Nevergrind, whatever game comes out. I think it's very important that if it is a success, that they're able to keep that engine going or those styles of graphics going for a long term, because I mean, in the end, you spend money on a gaming computer or console or whatever, and you want to be immersed and you want it to look awesome.
Well, and I think is like it's evolution of technology, both hardware and software, engine, all of that. So I think it kind of goes along with the territory. If you're trying to produce a realistic game and you put realistic graphics in it, that makes sense. If you're trying to produce something that has a sense of realism, but you also want people to know they're playing a video game, it's absolutely okay to put a stylized graphic in there. And like Saralyn said, stylized graphics isn't necessarily cartoony. It could be hyper realistic. It could be like, ultra HD, like where things are just like it's a video game, but it almost has that uncanny valley feel because it looks so real. Like that would be stylized in and of itself. But I think the important thing is you can't do what EverQuest 1 did, and this is their biggest, I think this is their biggest failing. They never left an opportunity for them to update their graphics engines. So, and that's the biggest problem now. You need to be in a position, I mean, World of Warcraft did it, right? Like we saw, you remember what WoW Classic looked like.
Yep.
And then you jump in WoW now and you're like, yeah, it's stylized, but it looks pretty fucking good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
even on WoW Classic, it didn't look bad,
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing, is to be able to go from putting two flat planes together to make a tree to actually being able to produce a three-dimensional object that resembles a tree and a stylized, almost real capacity over the course of 12 to 15 years. I think that's the important thing, is like, if you're going to go realistic, make sure that you can update the realistic thing. Because, like, you remember when we got like PS2 era, like circa early 2000s, like when you played these video games, you're like, damn, this looks so real. And then you look at it now and you're like, I used to think that looked real. And then you look at Madden, 2020, and you're like, Jesus Christ, those look like real people. So I don't know, man. I think it's just one of those things that it's about the game, it's about the technology, it's about the development staff. I think stylized graphics in terms of, I don't think it should be about the game that you're producing. I think it should be about what you're trying to create as an artist.
Yeah, and I think the key word there would be long term,
Right, absolutely.
Because Michael mentioned the stylized being cartoony. Personally, I'm not a big fan of cartoony looking games. I know you like it. I know a lot of my friends like it. I liked the EverQuest style because it didn't look so cartoony. But damn it, do I wish they could have updated it. And like Saralyn was saying, the EverQuest Next, it looked really cartoony. It looked a lot like WoW, but man, I was pumped for that vaporware shit that we got shown. Sorry.
All good, brother. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping things up here, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for sticking with us and the great conversation as always. Oh, shit. This is the
Your green screen, bro.
This is the screen that has the blue screen. So I'm blue screen right now, and I'm sorry. It was the shirt I grabbed, and I noticed it wasn't doing anything I set up, but I look fucking fantastic right now.
I knew there was a brick house beneath that shirt, man.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out and hanging out with us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Lately, we've had a lot of good conversation happening in chat. We've had a lot of comments coming in, contributing. So continue doing what you guys are doing. Share the content with your friends. Throw them up in your gaming groups. Throw them up in Discords. Throw up these links. Let people know. We started going through the process of creating a pre-stream reminder so that way people can add that, so that way they don't forget and they can be here for the live conversation. And we understand that, for those of you who are watching right now and weren't able to catch it Monday, you've got other things that you've got to do, and that's okay. But huge shout out to everyone who watches us and contributes. Like, we wouldn't be where we are today without every one of you guys. So with that being said, be sure, if you're not already and you've got those socials, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We are at Battle Axe Theater on both of those with no dashes, lines, dots, zeros, numbers. It's just Battle Axe Theater. And there's a great number that you can reach out to us. What's that, Def?
725-333-2285.
And you can give us a call. And Def, you want to hear people rant, right? I want to hear people rant.
You can text us. That's cool. But I would love to hear rants. I would love to hear, like you were saying earlier, Punk, potato chips, or, Susan or Larry, someone grinding your gears. Of course, keep it kind of civil,
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Just anything you want to get off your chest, because it will be going on air on a Monday. So get anything off. So we want rants. Text,
please be respectful, though. That is one thing. We did have one voicemail that we got, and it was a great discussion piece. And thank you so much for, you know who you are. Thanks for reaching out to us and leaving that voicemail. What we do ask, though, is that you try to keep any personal offenses out of it. So if something's really bugging and you want to talk about it, try to be general about it. No personal attacks to other content creators, toward any specific games or people who work for those companies. Just try to keep it on the general concept so we can discuss it on stream and play that for you guys. So again, thanks so much for that. Anything you want to add, Dev?
I just want to thank everybody once again for taking the time out of your Monday to hang out with us, and everybody watching on the VODs. Thank you so much. And that's about it. Much love.
Yeah, much love, guys. Thanks so much, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Later.